There is a place in space where nothing rushes. No falling, no drifting apart, no collision or collapse. It exists not because something holds it together, but because everything agrees to let it be. This is the Lagrange point specifically, L51 of the rare gravitational pauses in the vast choreography between Earth and the Moon, a quiet pocket where forces balance so precisely that an object placed there will remain, gently cradled by invisible hands, not held tight, not pushed away. Simply allowed, and in that allowance, something extraordinary begins. Imagine yourself arriving here slowly, without urgency. There is no sensation of speed, no sense of motion. Space does not rush past you. It does not roar. It simply exists, wide and dark and endlessly patient. Earth floats nearby, a blue-white marble, its clouds moving in soft spirals you can barely perceive from this distance. The Moon drifts alongside it, pale and textured, its craters etched like ancient memory. They orbit together in a slow, eternal conversation, and between them, here, is the quiet place they leave untouched. This is where the work begins. There is no sound at first, only the deep suggestion of vibration, too low to hear, more like a pressure in the chest than a noise, a reminder that even emptiness has structure, even silence has shape. The first thing you notice is how calm everything feels. Not empty, calm, the kind of calm that settles over a lake at dawn, before wind or birds or thought itself arrive. A calm that seems to invite patience, to ask you, gently, to slow down. Here, there is no horizon, no up or down, only a velvet black canvas scattered with starlight, so distant it feels frozen. This is not the dramatic black of danger or isolation. This is a quiet black, soft around the edges, like velvet curtains drawn across an infinite stage. And within this stillness, something waits. It does not move yet. It does not demand attention. It simply exists, an idea suspended in physics, a future held in equilibrium. The first structures arrive not with noise, but with intention. Small, distant points of light ease into position, guided by mathematics older than any civilization. Their trajectories are slow, deliberate arcs, as if space itself is breathing them inward. They do not dock, they settle. These are not ships in the traditional sense. They are scaffolds of thought, frameworks, seeds. They drift until they find their place in the invisible geometry of L5, where gravity balances like a perfectly held breath. Once there, they stop, not because they are anchored, but because they no longer need to move. From this vantage, Earth feels far away, not distant in kilometers, but in mood. Earth is motion, weather, noise, seasons, colliding with cities. Here, none of that applies. Here, time stretches gently like a long exhale. This is not a frontier of danger. It is a sanctuary of patience. The silence here is not empty. It hums faintly, a low cosmic resonance produced by solar wind, brushing magnetic fields, by radiation whispering through vacuum. It is the background music of the universe, steady, unhurried, eternal, and within that sound, construction begins, not with explosions, not with force, with alignment. Massive components glide into position, guided by algorithms older than nations. Each piece knows exactly where it belongs, not because it is commanded, but because the physics of this place make all other positions uncomfortable. There is a profound elegance in that, a kind of cosmic trust. You begin to sense the shape of what is coming, though it is still mostly absence. A curved suggestion, a line so long and faint that your mind struggles to interpret it as a structure at all. This is the beginning of the cylinder, but not yet the cylinder itself. For now, it is only a promise, a curve traced in emptiness, waiting to be filled. As you observe, you become aware of scale in a new way. Earth, once so large, now feels like a jewel set off to the side. The Moon, a pale companion, and here, in between them, Humanity is sketching something vast enough to host weather, forests, rivers, and lives. The thought does not feel ambitious. It feels natural, as if this was always meant to happen, once curiosity matured into patience. The construction field remains quiet. There are no sudden flashes, no aggressive movements. Instead, thin streams of material begin to unfurl, carbon-rich filaments, drawn from future sources, spooled gently into alignment. They shimmer faintly, catching sunlight and bending it into soft arcs. They do not yet form walls. They form intention. You might imagine standing still within this space. Though standing has little meaning here, you float, suspended within the gentle cradle of L5's balance, watching the geometry of a home take its first breath. And in that moment, something remarkable happens. The mind slows. Thoughts lose their sharp edges. Time stretches, smooth and uninterrupted. The urgency that governs life on planetary surfaces dissolves. There is no weather to outrun, no nightfall to prepare for, no gravity tugging at your bones. Only the sense of being held, not by hands, but by mathematics, so precise it feels almost compassionate. This is where the idea of the cylinder becomes more than engineering. It becomes a promise. A promise that life does not need to cling desperately to planets, that it can choose its environment, that it can build gentler worlds when given patience and time. The silence deepens. Far away, the Sunday glows steadily, its light taking minutes to reach this place. When it arrives, it does not blaze. It drapes itself across surfaces like silk. The light touches the forming structure and slides along its length, revealing subtle curvature, a whisper of the immense scale to come. Nothing casts a shadow yet. There is nothing solid enough to interrupt the light. But that will change. Slowly, imperceptibly, the first true anchors settle into place. Anchor points that will someday hold continents of soil, forests, lakes, and cities. For now, they are simply quiet markers in a sea of nothing. You may notice something unexpected, a sense of safety. Despite the emptiness, despite the distance from Earth, this place does not feel hostile. It feels intentional, balanced, as if the universe itself has agreed to pause here to let something gentle unfold. And in that calm, a rhythm emerges, not sound, not motion, but cadence. A feeling of progression without urgency, a reassurance that nothing needs to be rushed. This is the first lesson of the cylinder. That creation does not require chaos. That complexity can be born from stillness. As time drifts forward, the framework grows almost imperceptibly thicker. Lines begin to suggest curves. Curves suggest volume. Volume suggests interior, and interior suggests life. Not yet present, but imaginable. You can almost feel it. The future gravity that will one day pull your feet toward a grassy floor. The air that will someday move past your skin. The warmth of a sun that is not a star, but a reflection shaped by mirrors. All of that is still far away. For now, there is only this, a quiet place between worlds, a pause in the cosmic rhythm, a cradle for something gentle. The universe is not rushing you, it is waiting with you. And as the light continues to fall across the forming structure, as Earth and Moon continue their endless dance in the distance, the first phase comes to rest, not as an ending, but as a foundation, a place where patience becomes architecture, where stillness becomes strength, where the future begins by doing nothing at all. And in that perfect balance, the long dream of a living world in space finally begins. The stillness remains, but it deepens now, no longer empty, no longer waiting. It becomes expectant, out beyond the gentle balance of the Lagrange point, far from the quiet symmetry where the future city rests. Something ancient drifts through the dark. It is older than any world with oceans, older than any sky that has ever known clouds. A traveler left over from the earliest construction of the solar system, wandering in silence for billions of years. An asteroid. Not dramatic, not tumbling wildly through space, just a long, slow presence, shaped by time and impact and cold. Its surface is scarred and pitted, textured like dried clay and ancient bone. Dust clings to it in fine layers, untouched for ages. No sound has ever touched it, no warmth has ever lingered, until now. The first sign of change is not movement, but attention. From the quiet of the Lagrange point, delicate instruments turn their awareness toward the approaching body. Not weapons, not tethers, just sensors, soft beams of light, and gravity mapping its shape, density, and internal composition. The asteroid does not resist. It has never known resistance. It simply continues on its path, unaware that its journey is about to become something else. A faint hum begins to form in the background, not audible in the conventional sense, but perceptible as pressure, like standing near a vast machine behind a wall. It is the sound of intention. Small craft emerge slowly from the stillness around the construction zone. They do not rush. They drift, positioning themselves with careful precision, forming a loose halo around the ancient rock. Their movements are so slow they feel ceremonial, as though guided by ritual rather than computation. These are tug drones, autonomous, patient, and impossibly precise. They do not grab, they persuade. Soft plumes of ionized gas bloom from their engines, not pushing, but nudging. Each microburst alters the asteroid's trajectory by fractions of a degree. The change is almost imperceptible, but over hours, then days, it becomes meaningful. The asteroid begins to curve, not abruptly, not violently. It simply agrees to take a different path. As it drifts closer to the Lagrange point, the light begins to change. Sunlight slides across its uneven surface, revealing veins of metal and stone beneath layers of ancient dust. Flecks of nickel glint. Iron-rich bands shimmer softly. Embedded within are traces of water ice, locked away since before planets had names. This is not destruction. This is invitation. The asteroid passes slowly into the sphere of influence around the construction zone, and the tone of the environment shifts. The quiet remains, but now it carries purpose. A low, steady vibration hums through the void. The sound of systems awakening, of processes aligning. Around the asteroid, structures begin to unfold. They resemble petals more than machines, curved and elegant, their surfaces smooth and reflective. They extend outward, forming a gentle cradle. No clamps snap shut, no drills bite in. Instead, fields of controlled energy envelop the rock, holding it in a delicate embrace. For the first time in billions of years, the asteroid is not alone. Within this field, temperature changes ever so slightly. Enough to awaken dormant molecules, but not enough to fracture or stress. The asteroid responds not with cracking, but with relaxation. Microscopic shifts, easing centuries of internal tension. Then, slowly, the transformation begins. At specific points along its surface, focused beams trace glowing lines. Not cutting, coaxing. The outermost layers soften, transitioning from solid to malleable, like stone, remembering how to flow. Material lifts gently away, drawn toward waiting collectors. There is no violence here, no explosions, no tearing, only patience. The extracted material drifts like metallic mist, guided by magnetic currents into ordered streams. Each particle knows where it is meant to go. Each fragment becomes part of a larger choreography, moving in elegant arcs toward the assembly fields near the forming cylinder. The asteroid grows lighter, fraction by fraction, and yet it does not feel diminished, it feels fulfilled. Its long, solitary journey through space is no longer aimless. It has become a contribution, a foundation, a beginning. The soundscape shifts again. Beneath the deep, ambient hum, a new texture emerges, a soft, granular resonance, like sand flowing slowly through cupped hands. It is the sound of matter being reimagined. As more material is harvested, the asteroid's shape softens, jagged edges smooth, cavities open where solid rock once lay. But nothing collapses. Everything is calculated, balanced, intentional. Light dances differently now, scattering through fine dust clouds that glow faintly before being gathered and guided away. The scene is almost meditative, a slow ballet of transformation against the endless dark, and all the while, the construction site at L5 grows more defined. From this distance, you can see the beginnings of the great structure's curvature, still skeletal, still transparent, but undeniably present. The harvested materials stream toward it like luminous veins, feeding a growing idea. This is not consumption, it is collaboration. The asteroid gives itself willingly, not through destruction, but through participation. Its ancient matter will become walls that shelter forests. Its metals will frame windows that hold back vacuum and invite starlight. Its minerals will become soil, water channels, and pathways for future lives. Time stretches, hours pass, then days, perhaps weeks. It is difficult to tell here, where the only clock is motion and change. Eventually, the asteroid's role nears completion. What remains is a smaller, gentler core, its once rugged identity softened into something serene. It drifts now as a companion piece, no longer a wanderer, but a relic of origin. The tug drones begin to withdraw, their task fulfilled. One by one they ease away, their faint exhausts fading into the dark. The space between Earth and Moon feels subtly different now. Not heavier, not crowded, just purposeful. In the distance, the forming cylinder glows faintly, its skeleton richer, denser, more defined than before. It feels closer, not in distance, but in destiny. Here, in this quiet moment, you can sense the philosophy taking shape. This project is not about conquering space. It is about listening to it, about understanding that even the coldest rock has a story. And that story can become shelter, home, and future when treated with care. As the last fragments of the asteroid settle into their new roles, the hum of activity softens again. The universe exhales. The space around L5 returns to stillness. But it is a changed stillness now, one that carries memory, one that holds promise. And somewhere within that promise, the next phase waits patiently, ready to unfold. The great shell is no longer an idea. It has substance, and the dream continues. The materials have arrived, but nothing moves yet. Not because nothing is ready, but because this stage does not begin with motion. It begins with alignment. Out in the quiet cradle of the Lagrange point, where gravity holds its breath, the gathered matter floats in patient suspension. Metallic filaments, refined carbon, translucent composites, each element waits in a slow orbit, neither drifting away nor colliding, simply existing in a shared stillness. This is the moment before form. If you look closely, you begin to notice patterns emerging, subtle and deliberate. Invisible fields pass through the gathered materials like currents through deep water. They are not forces of pressure or heat, but of instruction. Mathematical whispers, geometries encoded into space itself. And then, gently, the weaving begins. At first, it is almost imperceptible. A single strand unspools itself from a waiting cluster, thin, dark, and impossibly strong. It glides outward, curving gracefully, tracing an arc so large, it feels more like a horizon than a line. Another follows, and another. Soon, hundreds of these filaments are moving together, each guided by autonomous weavers. Machines so quiet they seem more like ideas than objects. They do not rush, they do not hesitate. Each one knows exactly where it must go, and when. They resemble long-limbed spiders, though without menace. Their movements are smooth, slow, deliberate, almost meditative. Each limb extrudes material with precision measured in microns, laying down strands that connect, overlap, and reinforce one another. There is no scaffolding. The structure builds itself in open space, held together by geometry and trust. As the first arcs connect, something remarkable happens. The empty space between them begins to feel defined. The human mind, ever eager to find meaning, starts to sense a surface where none yet exists. A suggestion of inside and outside, a beginning of enclosure. The filaments darken slightly as they cool, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. They form a matte lattice, subtle and elegant, stretching farther and farther until the curvature becomes unmistakable. This is no sphere. This is something longer, more deliberate. A cylinder, so vast that its ends disappear into distance, its curve so gentle that it feels almost flat when you stand near it. And yet, if you follow it with your eyes long enough, you realize it loops back on itself, a continuous ribbon of structure waiting to become a world. The weaving continues, layer by layer. The shell thickens, not solid, not hollow, engineered in gradients. Inner layers tuned for strength, outer layers tuned for protection. Between them, spaces for future systems, conduits, shielding, living membranes. The soundscape shifts subtly. Where once there was silence, now there is rhythm. A soft, repeating pulse accompanies each extrusion of material. A quiet click, a muted hum, a gentle vibration that resonates through the growing frame, not loud enough to intrude, but steady enough to soothe. It feels less like construction and more like breathing. With each completed ring, the cylinder gains identity. It stops being a concept and starts becoming a place. Light behaves differently now. Instead of passing through open space, it skims along curved surfaces, creating gradients and shadows that drift slowly as the sunday moves. The inside of the shell, still empty, begins to feel enclosed, not in a confining way, but in a protective one. You might imagine standing within it, even now, suspended in the center, watching the walls form around you. There is no sense of claustrophobia. The scale is too vast, the curve too gentle. It feels more like standing beneath an enormous sky that just happens to wrap around itself. Time stretches. The weaving does not rush. There is no need to. Each strand must cool, settle, integrate. The system listens to itself constantly, adjusting tension, redistributing loads, ensuring that no stress accumulates unnoticed. This is engineering that values patience over speed. And as the structure grows, something else begins to emerge, an internal rhythm, like a heartbeat still learning its pace. You can sense it in the minute vibrations that travel through the shell, in the way the entire structure responds as a unified whole. Not rigid, resilient, alive, in a way. Far away, the remnants of the asteroid continue to feed the process. But here, within the forming cylinder, the focus shifts inward. Attention turns to balance, to symmetry, to grace. The cylinder's interior begins to take on depth. Not depth of distance, but depth of presence. It feels like a place where sound will one day echo gently, where footsteps will carry meaning, where wind will have room to wander. And still, the weaving continues. As more layers are added, the shell begins to regulate itself. Tiny imperfections are corrected before they can grow. Tensions equalize. The structure learns how to hold itself. This is not brute force construction. It is collaboration between matter and mathematics, between intention and allowance, between humanity's desire to build and the universe's willingness to support it. At moments, the activity slows almost to stillness. The machines pause, not from malfunction, but from choice. Sensors read, recalibrate, confirm. The entire system breathes together. Then, gently, the work resumes. You might notice that the sound has changed again. It has deepened, become warmer. A low, comforting resonance that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It is the sound of mass settling into harmony. If you focus, you can almost hear the future echoing through it. Wind moving through trees that do not yet exist. Footsteps along paths not yet laid. Voices carried across open spaces that are still empty. The cylinder is learning how to be a world, and in this stage, It is learning slowly, deliberately, beautifully. Time becomes fluid here. Hours blend into days, days into weeks, but the pace never feels long. It feels right. The weaving arms complete one segment, then glide forward to begin the next, leaving behind a surface so smooth. It appears grown rather than built. The seams between layers fade as materials merge seamlessly, forming a continuous whole. The structure now stretches far beyond easy comprehension. You cannot see its end from any one point, and yet it feels complete in every moment, as if any cross-section of it could stand alone as a finished masterpiece. Light drifts across the inner surface, painting gentle gradients that shift as the cylinder slowly rotates, just enough to remind you that motion has begun. Even if gravity has not yet awakened, this is the quiet before weight, the calm before direction. Soon, the cylinder will spin, and down will be born. But for now, it floats, perfectly balanced, cradled by forces so subtle they feel like kindness. The weaving nears completion. The final strands lock into place, their vibrations settling into a unified tone, a deep, resonant note that seems to hum through space itself. It is not loud. It does not demand attention. It simply is. And in that sound, the hull announces itself as whole, not finished, but ready, ready to turn, ready to feel gravity for the first time, ready to become a home. As the last weaver retracts, drifting back into stillness, the vast cylindrical form hangs quietly against the stars, a monumental arc of intention suspended between what was and what will be. The silence returns, but it is no longer empty. It is full of promise. And somewhere within that quiet, the next phase waits, patient, inevitable, and beautifully slow. Nothing moves at first. The hull floats in perfect stillness, a vast curved horizon suspended in the velvet dark. It has weight now, not mass alone, but presence. A completed form waiting for its first breath of motion. The silence here is no longer empty. It is expectant, like the pause before a deep inhalation. This is the moment everything changes. Until now, the structure has existed without direction. No up, no down, only orientation by reference. The distant glow of the Sunday, the pale echo of Earth, the faint suggestion of shadow where light bends around curvature. But gravity has not yet been invited inside. That invitation comes gently. It begins so subtly that it almost escapes notice. A low vibration trembles through the hull, not a sound, but a sensation, like a distant heartbeat, felt through the soles of your feet. The immense mass of the cylinder stirs, responding to a signal carried through its entire length. The engines do not roar, they murmur, placed symmetrically along the exterior, far beyond sight. They awaken in perfect unison. Their output is not thrust in the traditional sense, but controlled rotational impulse, applied so evenly that no point on the structure experiences strain. The cylinder begins to turn. At first, it is so slow it feels imagined. Stars shift by fractions of a degree. Light creeps across the interior skin, sliding rather than moving. If you were floating inside, you might not realize anything had changed at all, but your body would. There is a subtle pressure, not quite touch, not quite gravity. A suggestion of direction emerges, a gentle insistence that one side of the world is becoming different from the other. Down is being born. The rotation continues, steady and unhurried. The structure does not spin, it turns, like a massive thought forming itself. Each moment of motion is measured, calculated, confirmed. The system listens constantly to itself, adjusting micro-thrusts, distributing stress, maintaining perfect symmetry. There is no vibration, no turbulence, only smooth intention. As the angular velocity increases, the sensation grows more tangible. Loose particles inside the cylinder begin to drift outward, responding to the growing centrifugal pull. Dust that once hovered lazily now finds a preference, a direction it favors. The idea of floor begins to exist. It is not sudden, It is not dramatic. It is simply there, gradually asserting itself, like a memory returning after a long absence. Light behaves differently now. Instead of drifting freely, it begins to trace curves, hugging the inner surface of the cylinder. Shadows stretch and lean. The geometry of the space subtly reorganizes itself, and the mind instinctively starts to interpret orientation. You begin to feel it in your body. Not pressure, not weight, but orientation. A sense that one side of the vast interior is becoming below, while the opposite side rises away. It is deeply calming. The spin continues, gaining confidence. The cylinder hums softly, its frequency deepening as the motion stabilizes. This hum is not mechanical. It feels more like the resonance of a tuning fork, the size of a city, vibrating at exactly the frequency it was always meant to hold. Outside, the stars slowly arc. The universe appears to revolve, though in truth, it is the habitat turning within it. This illusion is gentle and mesmerizing, like watching clouds drift past while lying on your back. Inside the structure, the sense of scale becomes more intimate. What once felt like an abstract volume now begins to feel like a place you could walk across, a surface you could touch, a ground that will one day support forests, rivers, and cities. Gravity, in its earliest form, makes itself known, not as a force pulling you down, but as a quiet suggestion, a preference, a whisper saying, "Here is where you belong." Particles settle, loose materials slide, almost imperceptibly, toward the forming floor. They do not fall, they agree to be where the rotation asks them to be. This is artificial gravity, not imposed, but invited. The rotation rate stabilizes further, carefully tuned to mirror the comfort of Earth. Not too strong, not too weak, enough that walking will feel familiar, that standing will feel natural, that rest will feel like rest. As the spin steadies, the internal acoustics change. Sound now has a direction. Vibrations travel differently. A hum resonates along the curve, gentle and constant, like distant wind through a canyon. The cylinder has found its rhythm, and with that rhythm comes an extraordinary sense of peace. There is something profoundly reassuring about a world that turns exactly as it should. No surprises, no chaos, just a predictable, comforting motion, endlessly repeating. Time itself seems to soften. Minutes stretch, not with boredom, but with ease. The mind slows to match the cadence of rotation. Breathing becomes deeper. Thoughts lengthen and smooth out. You begin to understand that this motion is not just mechanical, it is emotional. It creates trust that the floor will be there when you step, trust that the world will behave tomorrow as it does today, trust that the forces at work are stable, patient, and kind. The cylinder turns on, not just physically, but existentially. It transitions from structure to environment, from object to world. The outside universe continues its grand, indifferent dance, stars burning, planets orbiting. But inside this rotating shell, a different tempo takes hold, one that belongs to human time, to days and nights, to rest and wakefulness. The rotation settles into its final cadence. A full cycle takes minutes, then hours, then longer, until it becomes background, like the turning of the earth beneath your feet. Something you know is happening, but no longer need to think about. And when that happens, something remarkable occurs. The cylinder stops feeling like a machine. It begins to feel like a place where gravity holds gently, where direction has meaning, where the idea of ground becomes real again, even in the vacuum of space. The great spin has done its work. The hull no longer floats aimlessly in the cosmic sea. It stands, if standing can be said to apply, anchored by motion, balanced by design, and ready to welcome what comes next. The silence that follows is different from before. It is not the silence of anticipation, but of arrival, of something having found its rhythm, and within that rhythm, a promise quietly forms. Soon, This place will breathe. Soon it will hold air, water, sound, and life. For now, it turns. Steady, certain, calm. A world learning how to carry itself. Light arrives slowly, not as a flash, not as a burst, but as a patient unfolding, a soft revelation that changes everything without announcing itself. Until now, the interior of the great cylinder has existed in a gentle half-darkness, illuminated only by reflected starlight and the muted glow of distant machinery. It has been a place of contours and suggestion, of form without color. A world felt more than seen, but this phase is different. This is when the sky is invited inside. The hull has finished its great turning, and with rotation stabilized, the next act begins not with movement, but with transparency. The vast interior waits in stillness, its curved walls ready to receive something entirely new. Light. Far along the exterior of the structure, where the shell curves endlessly into distance, immense panels begin to stir. They are not windows in the familiar sense, not holes cut into a wall, but crystalline layers grown and placed with molecular precision. Each panel is a marvel of engineering, flexible yet strong, clear yet protective, capable of filtering radiation, while allowing warmth and illumination to pass through. Like breath through glass, they lie dormant at first, flush with the hull, almost invisible. Then, one by one, they awaken. A soft shimmer ripples across their surfaces as internal lattices align. Molecular gates shift. Atomic bonds loosen just enough to allow photons to pass. The first window opens. Light enters. At first, it is subtle, a faint silver glow that spreads across the interior curve. It does not dazzle or glare. It simply appears, gently lifting the darkness, like a curtain drawn aside. Dust motes that once drifted unseen now glow as they pass through the beam, turning slow, lazy spirals in the airless space. The light traces the contours of the hull, revealing its vastness, its elegance, its quiet strength. The effect is immediate and profound. The interior no longer feels like a structure, it feels like a horizon. More windows activate, one after another, stretching along the length of the cylinder. Each admits sunlight at a carefully calculated angle, ensuring balance, preventing harsh contrast. The illumination grows richer, warmer, more dimensional. The Sunday itself remains distant, a steady presence far beyond the shell. But its light, guided and softened, now fills the space like a gentle tide. Shadows form for the first time. Long, graceful arcs slide along the curved walls, moving almost imperceptibly as the cylinder turns. There is no single direction for them to fall. Instead, they curve, wrapping around the interior in slow looping patterns. It feels like standing inside a sunrise. The light does not strike, it embraces. As more panels activate, the illumination becomes layered. Some areas glow with soft gold, others with cool white. Subtle gradients appear, hinting at the day, night cycles yet to come. The interior transforms from a blank expanse into a living canvas of light and shade. You can almost feel warmth now, not heat exactly, more like presence. A gentle reassurance that this place is meant to be lived in, not merely occupied. The hull responds, too. Its internal surfaces shift slightly in tone, absorbing and reflecting light in a delicate balance. Materials once matte take on a soft luster. Curves that were abstract become inviting, human in scale. The space begins to feel less infinite and more intimate. With light comes orientation. Up and down gain meaning through brightness and shadow. The side facing the sun glows faintly warmer. The opposite side rests in cooler hues. This subtle gradient provides a sense of direction, an intuitive understanding of where one is within the cylinder. And in this newfound clarity, the enormity of the structure becomes awe-inspiring rather than overwhelming. You can trace the arc of the habitat from one horizon to the other, watching it curve overhead until it disappears behind itself. The geometry feels impossible, yet gentle, a world folded into itself, lit from within. Light dances across the interior in slow motion as the cylinder turns. It slides along surfaces, revealing textures, then retreating again. Every rotation offers a slightly different composition, a new interplay of shadow and glow. Time begins to express itself through light. Minutes pass, and the quality of illumination subtly shifts. The color temperature warms, then cools, as the angle of the sun changes relative to the rotating windows. It is not yet a day-night cycle that will come later, but a suggestion of rhythm, a promise of future mornings and evenings. The experience is deeply calming. There is no glare, no harsh brightness. Every photon is filtered, considered, intentional. This is light designed for living, for rest, for long contemplation. As the illumination stabilizes, the interior atmosphere begins to feel more tangible. Surfaces appear closer, distances feel measurable. The vastness becomes navigable. This is the moment the space stops feeling abstract. It becomes a place you could walk through. The windows themselves are wonders of quiet engineering. From the inside, they appear almost invisible. Only the faintest outlines reveal their presence. From the outside, they shimmer like flowing water, catching and bending starlight into gentle arcs. They are not fragile. They are layered, resilient, alive with microstructures that adapt to radiation, temperature, and impact. They are the skin of this world, both barrier and bridge, and through them, the universe is always visible. Stars do not vanish when daylight comes. They soften, retreating into the background, but they remain reminders of where this place was born. The earth, when it drifts into view, glows softly, a pale blue ornament suspended in darkness. Not dominant, not distant, just present. There is comfort in that. As the light settles into a steady rhythm, something else begins to emerge. A sense of time passing that is neither frantic nor stagnant. A gentle cycle that invites rest and reflection. The interior no longer feels like an engineering project. It feels like dawn. The air, though not yet present, in full, seems almost imaginable now. You can picture how it will move, how it will catch the light, how it will carry sound. The mind fills in these future sensations naturally, as if the space itself is suggesting them. This is the quiet power of light. It does not force change, it invites it. And as the windows continue to open, as the cylinder bathes in this controlled, benevolent sun, the structure takes on a new identity. No longer merely a vessel, no longer just a shell. It becomes a horizon, a sky turned inward, a place where days will pass gently, where shadows will drift, where life will one day wake to a sunrise that curves overhead and feels entirely, impossibly natural. The great turning continues, smooth and unwavering. Light flows, darkness recedes, and in this balanced glow, the world prepares for its next transformation. Soon, air will fill these spaces. Soon, clouds will gather. Soon, rain will fall. But for now, there is only light, soft, patient, infinite, and the quiet understanding that something beautiful has just begun. Before air arrives, there is a pause, not an absence, but a held moment, like the space between an inhale and an exhale. The cylinder, now luminous with filtered sunlight, rests in a state of poised anticipation. Its vast interior glows softly, every curve visible, every surface warmed by light, yet untouched by wind. There is no sound, not because silence exists here, but because sound has not yet been invited. This is the threshold between structure and life. The world waits to breathe, far beyond the inner surface, deep within the supporting layers of the hull. Systems awaken that have been dormant until this precise moment. Valves loosen, channels open. Vast reservoirs prepared long ago begin to stir. Gases carefully balanced, meticulously purified, shift within their chambers. The first breath does not rush in. It arrives like a memory returning. A whisper of motion moves through the structure, so subtle it feels imagined. A change in pressure, a faint, almost emotional presence, brushing against the inner walls. The atmosphere does not flood. It seeps, spreading evenly, patiently, as if it understands the importance of gentleness. The interior begins to fill with possibility. At first, the air is thin, barely more than a suggestion. Molecules drift and collide softly, finding equilibrium. There is no wind yet, no sound, only the sense that something invisible is forming. And then, gradually, pressure builds not forcefully, comfortably. Like the feeling of sinking into warm water, the air wraps itself around the interior space, layer by layer, until it rests against the curved ground with quiet certainty. The cylinder exhales. The breath of this world is born. As the atmosphere thickens, it begins to carry sensation. Temperature equalizes, smoothing sharp contrasts between light and shadow. Warmth pools gently along the sunward side, while cooler currents linger in shaded arcs. The difference is subtle, designed not to startle, but to soothe. Air begins to move. At first, it drifts aimlessly, guided only by the slow rotation of the habitat. But soon, patterns emerge, gentle circulations that trace the curve of the interior. They are slow and steady, more like a tide than a wind. A sound emerges with them. Not a noise, but a soft, continuous presence. A whispering hush, like distant leaves stirring or waves breathing against a far-off shore. It fills the space without intruding, an ambient reminder that the world is now alive. The light changes too. Sunbeams passing through the crystal windows now meet resistance, scattering through the air. They soften, diffusing into warm shafts that stretch and bend, revealing movement where there was none before. Dust motes drift lazily, illuminated as they spiral downward, tracing invisible currents. The interior no longer feels hollow. It feels inhabited. As air continues to flow, it begins to carry scent, not strong, not specific, but present, a clean, mineral freshness like rain just before it falls. The faintest hint of ozone lingers, quickly mellowing into something neutral and comforting. The space breathes, and in that breathing, time seems to slow further. Each second stretches, becoming something to inhabit rather than pass through. The great cylinder, once silent and still, now hums with subtle life. The hum is not mechanical, it is organic, a blend of motion, pressure, and resonance that settles into a steady rhythm. It is the sound of equilibrium. Gradually, the atmosphere reaches its intended density. The pressure stabilizes at a gentle equilibrium, tuned to cradle life without strain. Breathing here, when life eventually arrives, will feel effortless, natural, familiar. Even now, without lungs to fill, the space feels breathable. The air embraces the curves of the world, flowing smoothly along the interior surface. It gathers near the base, warms slightly, and rises again in slow currents, creating a perpetual, invisible circulation. This motion gives the world texture. You can almost feel it brushing against your skin, cooling one side of your face, warming the other. You can imagine standing still and sensing direction, not through sight, but through touch. The cylinder learns how to breathe. With every gentle cycle, the atmosphere becomes more stable, more refined. Micro-adjustments happen constantly, tiny corrections guided by sensors that listen more than they command. They do not force balance, they encourage it. Above, far along the curve, the light shifts once more. As the rotation continues, the angle of illumination changes, and the air responds, carrying warmth into shaded areas, redistributing comfort. This is not weather, it is harmony. No storms form here, no violent fronts collide. This is a world designed for calm, where energy moves with intention, and rest is built into the system. The air carries sound now, soft, almost imperceptible. A low murmur, like breath, passing through leaves or water, moving far below the surface. It becomes a backdrop, a sonic foundation that reassures rather than distracts. It tells you that everything is functioning as it should. Time passes without urgency. The cylinder turns, the air circulates, the light drifts. Together they create a rhythm that feels ancient, though it has only just begun. a rhythm that invites stillness. In this moment, the world feels ready to receive life. Not in a hurry, not in excess. Just enough. The breath continues, steady and unbroken. It settles into its own cadence, one that will continue day after day, year after year, long after the moment of creation has faded into memory. And with that breath comes a profound shift. The space is no longer an empty vessel. It is an environment, a place where lungs will one day expand, where voices will travel, where silence will have texture and depth. The world inhales, the world exhales, and in that gentle cycle, something essential is born, not with spectacle, but with serenity. This is the beginning of atmosphere, the quiet foundation upon which all living moments will rest. And as the air settles into perfect balance, the great cylinder prepares for its next transformation. Soon the ground will darken with soil. Soon water will gather and fall. Soon life will take root. But for now, the world breathes, and in that breath, it becomes real. The air has learned how to move. It circulates now with quiet confidence, flowing along the curved interior of the world, carrying warmth, balance, and calm. The great cylinder breathes steadily, its atmosphere settled into a gentle rhythm. Nothing rushes, nothing strains. And now, with breath established, the next transformation begins. It starts low, close to the surface where gravity has finally claimed its place. The ground, until now, has been bare and smooth, a continuous arc of engineered material, flawless and pale, waiting for purpose. It has held light, reflected warmth, and supported the air above it, but it has not yet known touch. That changes slowly. From reservoirs embedded deep within the structure, material begins to flow, not poured, not dumped, but released with careful intention. Fine particulate matter drifts downward like a dark snowfall, settling gently across the curved interior. This is regolith, once part of ancient asteroids, once wandering through cold silence, now softened, processed, and prepared. Every grain has been cleansed of sharpness, balanced in composition, and enriched with the minerals life will one day crave. The first layer is thin, almost symbolic, a dusting that barely hides the pale surface beneath. But it spreads evenly, guided by gravity and design, following the curve of the world, as if it has always belonged there. As more material arrives, the layer deepens. It gathers in soft drifts, forming shallow contours that echo the curve of the habitat. There are no cliffs, no harsh slopes, only gentle variations, subtle rises and falls that suggest future hills and valleys. The soil is dark and rich, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Against the luminous interior, it looks almost velvety, a matte contrast to the smooth shell below. And then, something remarkable begins to happen. Life, in its smallest and quietest form, awakens. Long before plants or roots or leaves, there is chemistry. Microbial cultures, carefully cultivated and released, mingle with the soil. They move invisibly, tirelessly, transforming minerals into nourishment, binding particles together, creating structure where none existed before. The soil begins to breathe, not in any way that can be seen, but felt a subtle warmth, a faint sense of activity beneath the surface. The air above carries a new scent, now faintly metallic at first, then gradually softer, earthier. It is the smell of potential. This is not dirt yet. It is becoming soil. As the layers deepen, moisture is introduced, delicate, measured, dispersed as vapor rather than rain. It seeps downward, darkening the surface in irregular patterns. Tiny channels form as gravity guides the moisture through the substrate, creating pathways that will one day carry roots. The texture changes. What was once powdery becomes cohesive. Pressed lightly, it holds its shape, then relaxes again. Alive with microscopic motion, the world beneath your feet, if you were standing here, would feel warm and receptive, neither too soft nor too firm. A surface that invites touch. Light continues to pour in from above, now filtered not only by windows, but by air and dust. It reaches the soil in golden bands, warming it gently. The contrast between illuminated and shaded areas grows more pronounced, giving the ground a sense of depth and contour. The cylinder feels fuller now, no longer an empty shell. It has weight, not just physical, but emotional. It feels grounded, and as the soil spreads, something remarkable happens. Sound changes again. The soft hum of air becomes muted, absorbed by the ground. Echoes shorten. Silence becomes thicker, more intimate. The world begins to sound like a place meant to be walked upon, not merely observed. This is the acoustics of comfort. The process continues patiently. Layer upon layer settles into place, each carefully calibrated. Nutrients disperse evenly. Microbial life multiplies, weaving invisible networks through the dark earth. Nothing grows yet, but everything prepares. Time stretches once more, flowing gently as the soil matures. The system monitors itself continuously, making minute adjustments to temperature and moisture. Nothing is rushed, nothing is forced. This is cultivation without urgency. The soil darkens further as organic compounds integrate fully. Its surface becomes textured, soft, receptive. It holds warmth longer now, releasing it slowly back into the air as the light shifts. If you were to kneel here, if such a thing were possible, you would feel the ground responding, slightly yielding, supportive, alive, but calm. There is a sense of readiness in the space. The air above carries a faint, comforting scent, something between rain and stone, between forest and mineral. It lingers gently, grounding the vastness of the habitat in something familiar and deeply human. The interior feels smaller now, not in scale, but in intimacy. The presence of soil changes everything. It anchors the mind, it invites rest. Where there was once only architecture, there is now terrain. The idea of walking becomes imaginable. The idea of growing becomes inevitable. The light continues its slow arc, and as it does, the soil subtly responds. Temperature gradients shift, encouraging diversity. Some areas warm slightly more, others remain cool and shaded. Variation begins to take shape, hinting at future biomes. But for now, it is quiet. No plants yet break the surface. No roots claim territory. The world is in a state of readiness, a pause between preparation and awakening. The soil settles, the air breathes, the cylinder turns, and in this perfect stillness, the foundation of life is complete. This is the moment before green, the pause before growth, the calm before the gentle miracle of life begins to rise. Soon, seeds will be placed. Soon, leaves will unfurl. Soon, the world will change color. But for now, the earth rests, and the great habitat, balanced and breathing, waits patiently for what comes next. For a long time, nothing moves. The soil rests in its new form, dark, rich, patient. The air drifts quietly above it, carrying warmth and memory, but no urgency. Light glides along the curve of the world, rising and falling in a rhythm that has already begun to feel natural. Everything is ready, and yet nothing happens. This is not hesitation. It is timing, because rain, when it comes, must feel inevitable. High above the surface, far beyond where the soil can sense, water begins to gather, not in clouds yet, not in shapes or shadows, but in intention. Molecules drift upward, carried by subtle thermal gradients, lifted by warmth rising from the curved ground below. The movement is slow, almost imperceptible, but it is constant. The air learns to rise. As it ascends toward the inner axis of the cylinder, it cools. The warmth it carried loosens its grip. Moisture, once invisible, begins to collect first as suggestion, then as presence. There is no thunder, no sudden shift, only a gentle thickening of the air. The sky, if it can be called that, softens. Light diffuses as vapor gathers. The clarity of the interior dims slightly, not darkening but deepening. Colors grow richer. Shadows blur at their edges. A ceiling begins to form, not of stone or metal, but of possibility. Clouds are born slowly here. They do not billow or surge. They emerge as whispers of density, pale and translucent, drifting together like thoughts, finding each other. They stretch along the length of the cylinder, following its curve, suspended in quiet equilibrium. From below, the view is astonishing. You can see the clouds forming above and ahead, curling upward along the arc of the world. They do not gather in a single place. They wrap around, encircling the interior like a soft halo. There is no sky above in the traditional sense, only the inside of a world that now holds weather. The air cools by degrees. A barely perceptible chill brushes against the ground, refreshing rather than cold. The soil responds, releasing a faint earthy scent that rises to meet the forming clouds. This is the moment before rain. The air grows heavy in the most comforting way, like the pause before a summer shower. You can feel it in the stillness, in the way sound dampens, in how the light seems to hold its breath. Then, at last, the first droplet forms. High above, where warm air meets cool, a single bead of water gathers from the invisible. It swells, trembling, then lets go. It does not fall straight down. Instead, it follows the curve of the rotating world, tracing a slow arc through the air. For a moment, it seems to hover, catching the light, reflecting the vast interior around it. Sky above, ground below, infinity in between. Then it descends. The first drop touches the soil almost shyly. A soft, nearly inaudible sound, more a sensation than a noise. The surface darkens where it lands, absorbing the moisture eagerly. The earth exhales a deeper scent, rich and alive. And then another drop falls, and another. Soon the air fills with a gentle percussion, a quiet, rhythmic patter that spreads across the curved landscape. Rain begins not as a storm, but as a conversation between sky and ground. The droplets fall in long, graceful arcs, their paths subtly curved by rotation. Some fall almost sideways. Others drift, suspended for a moment, before continuing their descent. The effect is mesmerizing rain that seems to float as much as fall. As the rainfall strengthens, it remains gentle, no pounding, no rush. Just a steady, patient rhythm that soaks rather than strikes. The soil darkens further, drinking deeply. Tiny channels form as water begins to move across the surface, guided by the faintest contours. Small streams appear, no wider than a hand, tracing luminous paths through the dark earth. These rivulets do not race. They wander, they curve and converge, finding their way along the gentle slopes of the cylinder, pulled by gravity that is now familiar and reliable. Each stream reflects the light above, shimmering as it travels. The sound grows richer. A soft, layered symphony emerges, the whisper of rainfall, the murmur of water gathering, the quiet resonance of droplets, striking leaves that do not yet exist, but soon will. The air cools slightly as evaporation begins, lifting moisture back upward. The system breathes inhale, exhale, establishing the cycle that will sustain this world. Above, the clouds shift and thin, their work done for now. They stretch along the length of the habitat, thinning into veils that drift lazily toward the brighter side of the cylinder. Below, the ground glistens. Puddles form briefly in shallow basins before sinking in, absorbed by the thirsty soil. The surface becomes mottled with dark and light, texture and depth. The scent of rain deepens, becoming unmistakable now, clean, mineral, alive. It fills the air gently, grounding the vastness of the habitat in something intimate and familiar. There is a profound peace in this moment. The world has been washed for the first time. Every surface feels renewed. The soil settles into itself, heavier now, more cohesive. Microorganisms stir and multiply, responding to moisture and warmth, weaving unseen networks that will support life to come. The rain continues at a measured pace, never overwhelming, never ceasing entirely. It moves in bands, drifting along the interior like slow-moving curtains, ensuring every part of the world receives its share. As the cylinder turns, the rain traces its path endlessly, cycling from sky to ground and back again. It is a closed loop, elegant and self-sustaining. Time stretches. You could watch this forever. The way droplets catch the light, the way the ground darkens, then lightens again, the way the air seems to breathe with the world. Eventually, the rainfall softens. Droplets become mist. Mist becomes memory. The clouds thin and lift, retreating upward, dissolving back into vapor. Patches of light break through, illuminating the freshly watered earth below. Steam rises faintly where warmth meets moisture, a gentle haze that softens the landscape and blurs the horizon. The rain has done its work. The world feels clean, balanced, awake. The soil is ready now, nourished, responsive. Alive with unseen movement, the air feels fresher, lighter, filled with promise. This was not a storm, it was a beginning, a quiet initiation of the water cycle that will sustain forests, rivers, and life itself. A demonstration of harmony between motion and stillness, between structure and spontaneity. As the last droplets fall and the clouds drift on, the cylinder rests in a new state, washed, cooled, and prepared. The ground waits. Seeds will soon follow. But for now, the world listens to the fading echo of rain, and in that gentle silence, it feels whole. The great cycle has begun, and from this moment forward, nothing here will ever be truly dry again. The rain has passed, but its presence remains. The world does not return to stillness. Instead, it exhales into motion. Water, newly gifted to the surface, begins to listen to gravity, not the pull of a distant planet, but the gentle, persistent curve of the rotating world itself. What was once soil now glistens with pathways. At first, they are subtle, thin, wandering lines where moisture has chosen to travel rather than settle. They shimmer faintly, catching light as it drifts overhead. These early channels do not rush. They explore. They test the land, feeling their way forward with patient curiosity. The ground welcomes them. As water gathers, the soil yields just enough, guiding each trickle into soft grooves. Over time, these grooves deepen, becoming threads of movement stitched across the landscape. Some converge, others diverge, forming an intricate pattern that feels both spontaneous and inevitable. The first rivers are born. They do not tumble downward in a straight fall. Instead, they follow the arc of the world, curving gently along the inner surface of the cylinder. To the eye, they appear to flow sideways, sometimes even upward, defying old instincts of gravity while obeying a deeper, rotational truth. It is a beautiful illusion. From within this world, there is no up or down as once imagined. There is only direction, shaped by motion. Water understands this intuitively. It moves where it is invited, tracing paths that make sense within this curved reality. The rivers begin as quiet threads, whispering as they slide across the soil. Their voices are soft, almost shy, as though testing their own existence. The sound is gentle, a continuous murmur that settles into the background of the world. As they travel, they collect more water, tributaries merge, streams widen, and the quiet whisper grows into a layered harmony. Each joining adds depth, complexity, and richness to the soundscape. The land listens, so does the air. As water moves, it cools the surface, creating subtle temperature gradients that stir the atmosphere above. Soft breezes form, barely perceptible, carrying the scent of wet earth and mineral richness through the vast interior. The rivers carve shallow valleys, not through force, but through persistence. They do not cut violently into the land. They persuade it, shaping their paths through repetition rather than pressure. Here, erosion is not destruction, it is collaboration. The curvature of the world becomes more apparent now. From certain vantage points, the rivers appear to rise toward the horizon, bending gently upward as they follow the inner arc of the cylinder. The illusion is mesmerizing, a ribbon of water flowing toward the sky. And in the distance, far across the interior, the same river can be seen again, looping overhead, reflecting light like a silver thread suspended in air. It is the same water, the same journey, seen from different perspectives within a continuous world. Pools begin to form where the terrain dips ever so slightly. Shallow basins gather water, spreading into quiet lakes that mirror the sky above. Their surfaces remain mostly still, disturbed only by the faint ripple of incoming streams. The reflections are extraordinary. Clouds drift across the water's surface, mirrored perfectly. Light arcs across these lakes, bending with the curvature of the habitat. Looking into them feels like gazing into another sky, one that flows and breathes and moves just as gently as the one above. These lakes become anchors in the landscape, points of calm where water rests before continuing its endless circulation. Some of the water seeps downward, guided by the soil, into hidden reservoirs beneath the surface. There it waits, stored and filtered, ready to rise again through evaporation and plant life in cycles. Yet to come, the system is alive now, not with creatures, but with motion. The soundscape deepens. Where once there was only air and silence, there is now the constant murmur of flowing water. It varies in tone and texture, soft trickles, smooth glides, the faint gurgle of water navigating stone. It is never loud, never demanding. It simply exists, a continuous lullaby woven into the fabric of the world. Light dances on the water's surface, breaking into fragments that drift across the curved ground. Reflections ripple gently, shifting with each movement of the liquid. The entire interior seems to breathe with this motion, expanding and contracting in subtle harmony. The temperature stabilizes further. Water moderates extremes, smoothing transitions between warmth and cool. The air becomes more comfortable, more forgiving. It holds moisture without heaviness, freshness without chill. The environment begins to feel welcoming, not impressive, not overwhelming, welcoming. As time passes, the river systems become more defined. Banks form naturally, sculpted by flow rather than force. The edges soften, inviting growth yet to come. The soil near the water darkens, enriched by constant contact. There is a sense of patience in it all. Nothing rushes toward completion. Everything evolves at the pace it needs. From a distance, the network of rivers resembles veins in a living body, circulatory pathways, distributing energy, balancing temperature, sustaining motion. The comparison feels apt. This world now has a circulatory system. It is alive in function, even if not yet in form. As the cylinder continues its rotation, the rivers continue their endless journey. They do not drain away or disappear. They loop, return, and rise again, participating in a closed, elegant cycle. From certain vantage points, you can see the water ascending the far side of the world, glimmering against the distant curve. It looks almost like a river flowing uphill, defying intuition while perfectly obeying physics. This sight carries a quiet wonder. It invites stillness. It invites contemplation. You might imagine standing at the edge of one of these rivers, feeling the gentle pull of motion beneath your feet. You might imagine the cool air rising from its surface, the faint sound of flowing water echoing softly across the vast interior. This is a world that does not hurry. It has all the time it needs. The rain has passed, but its gift remains, moving endlessly, shaping gently, sustaining quietly. The water does not ask where it is going. It simply goes. And in doing so, it teaches the world how to move with grace. As the cycle continues, the rivers settle into their paths, becoming reliable, enduring features of the landscape. They will shape forests, nourish life, reflect light, and carry sound. But for now, they simply flow, a continuous ribbon of motion in a world that has learned how to breathe, how to hold, and how to let go. The river in the sky has found its way, and with it, the world takes another step toward becoming home. For a long while, the world simply rests, The rivers have found their paths. The air has learned its rhythms. The soil holds warmth and memory beneath its dark surface. Nothing demands attention now. Nothing hurries forward. And yet, something is stirring. It begins invisibly, far beneath the surface. In the quietest places of all, tiny movements ripple through the soil. Not motion in the way of flowing water or drifting air, but a subtler kind of life-chemical conversations. Minute awakenings, exchanges too small to see yet powerful enough to change everything. Seeds, long dormant, begin to listen. They do not wake all at once. There is no sudden burst, no dramatic transformation. Instead, each seed waits for its own perfect moment, sensing moisture, warmth, balance. When those conditions align, something ancient stirs within them. A split forms. A root tip nudges downward, testing the ground. It meets no resistance, only softness, nutrients, and space. Encouraged, it presses on, branching delicately, weaving itself into the earth like a quiet promise. Above, something else stirs. A stem begins to rise. At first, it is no more than a pale suggestion, a thread of green pushing gently upward through the soil. It does not force its way through. The earth parts willingly, welcoming the growth it was made to support. Across the curved landscape, this moment repeats itself thousands of times. The surface trembles, not with motion, but with intention. Green appears. At first it is sparse. Isolated shoots, catching the light in scattered patches. They look fragile against the vastness of the habitat, small declarations of life in an immense space. But they do not remain alone for long. As light continues to pour in, filtered and gentle, the sprouts respond. Leaves unfurl slowly, stretching toward warmth. Their surfaces catch the glow, turning translucent for a moment before deepening into richer hues. Photosynthesis begins. It is a quiet miracle, light becoming energy, air becoming sustenance. The plants exhale oxygen in soft, invisible breaths, enriching the atmosphere further. The air grows fresher, brighter, more alive. The cylinder inhales. The green spreads. Grasses emerge next, carpeting the soil in delicate blades that ripple with the faint movement of air. They bend easily, responding to the lightest touch, creating waves that travel across the landscape like whispers. The color deepens from pale green to emerald, from emerald to a rich, living tapestry. This is not wild growth. It is guided, intentional, but never forced. Each species finds its place, forming communities rather than competing for dominance. Low shrubs follow, their leaves broader, their presence grounding. They anchor the soil, their roots weaving strength beneath the surface. Tiny buds form, hinting at blooms yet to come. Above, the light shifts again. The mirrors guiding sunlight adjust subtly, bathing different regions in slightly varied tones. Some areas receive warmer hues, others cooler, encouraging diversity. The landscape begins to differentiate itself, not by borders, but by mood. You could walk here now. If you did, the ground would yield softly beneath your steps, firm enough to support you, gentle enough to comfort. The air would carry the scent of growth, fresh, clean, faintly sweet. The soundscape changes once more. Where water once dominated, there is now a softer layer of sound, the whisper of leaves, the subtle rustle of grasses brushing against one another, the quiet creak of stems adjusting toward the light. The world hums, but now with life. As time passes, the plants grow bolder, stems thicken, leaves widen. Some species reach upward, seeking more light, while others spread low, forming a living carpet beneath. The soil grows richer, darker, fed by falling leaves and organic exchange. Microbial life flourishes, breaking down matter, feeding roots, strengthening the foundation of the ecosystem. This is not a garden in the traditional sense. It is a living system, learning itself. The cylinder's rotation carries the growing world through subtle cycles of light and shadow. As illumination shifts, Different regions awaken in turn. Growth is not uniform, it is rhythmic, like breathing. In some places, vines begin to climb, reaching towards structural supports, wrapping themselves gently around curves and pillars. They do not strain or crack the surface. They cling with care, guided by design. Elsewhere, soft mosses spread across shaded areas, creating cool, velvety expanses that absorb sound and light alike. They soften the world, making it quieter, calmer. The air changes again. Now, it carries hints of green, fresh, clean, alive. A fragrance that evokes rain, soaked earth, and open fields. It is comforting, grounding, familiar. With each passing cycle, the environment becomes more complex, more layered. Height and depth emerge. Variation replaces uniformity, and with that complexity comes a subtle sense of invitation. This place is no longer just habitable, it is hospitable. Light filters through leaves now, scattering into dappled patterns across the ground. Shadows dance gently, constantly shifting as the world turns. The effect is hypnotic, soothing, endlessly new. The rivers continue their slow journeys, now shaded in places by growing vegetation. Their banks soften further, lined with greenery that drinks deeply and returns moisture to the air. Everything feeds everything else. Nothing is wasted. The system settles into a quiet balance, a living equilibrium that sustains itself through cooperation rather than dominance. This is not wilderness as chaos. This is harmony as design. As the greenery thickens, the scale of the habitat becomes more apparent. The curve of the world stretches on, forests forming along its arc, disappearing into the distance before rising again overhead. The sight is both intimate and vast, grounding and awe-inspiring all at once. The idea of inside and outside fades. This is simply a world, a place where life unfolds naturally, even though it was carefully guided into being. Time continues to pass, unhurried. The growth slows as systems stabilize. Plants reach maturity. The ecosystem finds its balance point. The air is rich with oxygen now, comfortable and clean. Breathing here feels effortless, satisfying, deeply calming. Silence returns, not the empty silence of before, but a living quiet filled with subtle motion and soft sound. Leaves sway. Water murmurs. The world exhales. Standing within this green expanse, you might feel something profound. A sense that this place is not merely an experiment or a structure, but a home in the making. The green awakening is complete. What was once bare and silent now hums with life. And as the light continues its gentle journey across the curved sky, the world settles into itself, ready, patient, and alive. The next chapter will not be about creation. It will be about living. The world has learned how to breathe. Now it learns how to live. Where once there was only soil, water, and growing green, shapes begin to emerge, not imposed, not forced, but gently introduced. They rise as extensions of the land itself, as though the planet is choosing to grow structures the way it grows trees. These are the first dwellings. They do not arrive as buildings in the traditional sense. There are no foundations carved brutally into the ground, no rigid corners asserting dominance over the landscape. Instead, the architecture unfolds organically, guided by the same principles that shaped the rivers and forests before it. The structures seem to appear rather than be built. Low walls curve upward from the terrain, formed from materials grown rather than assembled. Smooth composites blend with stone-like textures, warm to the touch and responsive to temperature. They hold shape not through weight but through balance, each form supported by geometry and gentle tension. There are no roofs, not because they are unnecessary, but because the sky itself has become the ceiling. Above, the great arc of the cylinder stretches endlessly, a luminous canopy of drifting light and distant greenery. There is no threat of rain, no falling debris, no need for shelter in the traditional sense. The world is stable, predictable, and kind. homes open upward. Light pours in freely, unbroken, bathing interiors in soft illumination that shifts throughout the day. Shadows move slowly across floors and walls, tracing time with patience rather than urgency. The architecture breathes with the environment. Walls curve instead of meeting at harsh angles. Openings guide air gently through living spaces, allowing currents to pass without disturbance. Nothing is sealed off from the world, everything participates in it. Paths form between dwellings, not paved but shaped, pressed gently into the earth by design and use. They curve naturally, following the contours of the land, leading residents not in straight lines but in meandering journeys. The effect is calming. There is no rush from one place to another. Movement feels like wandering, not commuting. Communal spaces emerge next. Wide terraces open toward the horizon, offering uninterrupted views of the curving world. Here, people will gather not for obligation but for presence. The spaces invite rest, conversation, quiet observation. Low platforms extend outward like fingers, reaching toward the sky. Some hover slightly above the ground, supported by subtle fields that give them the feeling of floating. Others rest gently against the earth, their surfaces warmed by the soil beneath. The absence of roofs changes everything. There is no sense of enclosure, no separation from the larger world. The sky is always visible, sometimes bright, sometimes soft, sometimes deep with stars. It becomes a constant companion, a reminder of scale and connection. When the light shifts, the entire city shifts with it. At certain angles, buildings glow as sunlight reflects off their curved surfaces. At others, they seem to melt into the landscape, becoming almost invisible. The boundary between architecture and nature blurs until it is difficult to say where one ends and the other begins. This is intentional. These structures are not meant to dominate the environment. They are meant to belong to it. Inside, spaces are open and fluid. Rooms flow into one another without rigid divisions. Walls curve gently, guiding movement rather than restricting it. There is an emphasis on openness, on visibility and connection rather than separation. Living spaces are oriented toward the horizon, offering long, uninterrupted views of the interior world. From almost anywhere, you can see the curve of the land rising upward, meeting itself far above. It creates a sense of being held within something vast, yet intimate. Light filters through leaves overhead, casting dappled patterns across floors. The air carries the scent of greenery and clean water. Every breath feels intentional, as if the environment itself is designed to care for those within it. Sound behaves differently here, without hard edges to bounce against. Noise dissipates gently. Voices carry only as far as they need to, softening as they travel. Footsteps are muted. Even gatherings of many people feel calm, unhurried. The world encourages quiet presence rather than volume. As the day progresses, the light shifts slowly across the curved sky. Colors change subtly, warming and cooling in rhythm with the rotation. Shadows stretch, then shorten, tracing time across walls and walkways. There are no clocks needed. The sky itself keeps time. Homes are not uniform, but they share a language. Some rise slightly higher, forming gentle terraces. Others nestle closer to the ground, half embraced by greenery. All are designed to feel personal yet connected, individual yet harmonious. This is architecture as invitation. Every surface seems to ask you to pause, to sit, to observe. There are no sharp edges demanding attention. Everything curves, softens, welcomes. The absence of roofs means the boundary between inside and outside dissolves. At night, the stars become part of the home. At day, the sky becomes a ceiling of moving light. People will sleep beneath it without fear, because this place does not threaten, it supports. As the habitat rotates, subtle shifts in light mark the passage of time. A warm glow indicates morning. A softer amber suggests afternoon. A gentle dimming ushers in rest. Yet even in the dimmest moments, there is never true darkness. Starlight filters through, reflections from distant mirrors glimmer, and the world remains softly illuminated. This constancy fosters calm. Here, life is not about survival or defense. It is about presence. The city does not impose order, it encourages harmony. Paths wind toward gathering spaces, where voices will one day mingle. Quiet alcoves invite solitude. Gardens weave through everything, blurring the line between constructed and grown. The entire environment feels like a single, coherent thought, an idea made tangible. From afar, the roofless city appears like a tapestry laid gently across the interior of the cylinder. Threads of green, stone, and light intertwine, forming patterns that change with the sun's movement. From within, it feels like belonging. The world has become habitable not just in function, but in spirit. This is not a place built to survive harsh conditions. It is a place built to nurture, to encourage reflection, to support community, to offer peace. And as the cycle of light continues its slow dance across the sky, the city settles into itself. It does not rush to fill every space. It allows room for growth, for change, for future lives to shape it further. The architecture waits patiently for footsteps, for voices, for laughter, for stillness. And beneath the open sky, beneath the gentle curve of a world designed with care, the first true sense of home begins to form, not as a structure, but as a feeling, a quiet understanding that this place was made not just to exist, but to be lived in. At the heart of the world, something extraordinary waits. Beyond the forests and flowing rivers, beyond the quiet homes and sunlit terraces, there exists a place where the rules soften. A place untouched by weight or downward pull. A place where the body forgets what it means to fall. This is the center. Not a destination reached by distance, but by letting go of direction itself. As one moves inward from the curved surface of the cylinder, gravity begins to loosen its hold. The ground beneath your feet grows lighter with each step. The sensation is subtle at first, barely noticeable, but it accumulates gently, like the fading pressure of a held breath. Your footsteps become quieter, your body feels lighter. Movement begins to feel less anchored, less constrained by expectation. The transition is not abrupt. There are no thresholds, no sharp boundaries. Gravity fades the way sound fades in a quiet room, gradually, kindly, until one day you realize it is no longer there. This is the zero-G core. At the center of the cylinder, the rotation that once pressed the world outward becomes perfectly balanced. Forces cancel, weight dissolves. Here, nothing falls. Instead, everything floats. The space opens up into a vast, hollow cathedral of air, stretching endlessly in all directions. The curved walls of the habitat are now far away, forming a distant ring of green and light. From this vantage point, the entire world reveals its shape, an elegant, rotating ribbon of life encircling you. There is no up or down here, only orientation by intention. You drift effortlessly, guided by the smallest movements. A gentle push sends you gliding across the space, your body responding with surprising grace. Motion feels instinctive, as though you were always meant to move this way. There is no fear in the floating. The air supports you. The space welcomes you. Here, the concept of ground dissolves, replaced by an intimate relationship with momentum and stillness. You learn to turn with a tilt of your shoulder, to drift with a breath, to come to rest by reaching out and touching a softly glowing handhold embedded in the structure. These handholds are scattered throughout the core, smooth, organic forms that seem to grow from the walls themselves. They provide gentle points of contact, anchors for rest or redirection. Around you, others move with quiet grace. Some drift in slow arcs, eyes closed, savoring the sensation of weightlessness. Others practice careful motion, pushing off surfaces to trace elegant loops through the air. There is laughter here, not loud or chaotic, but light, carried easily through the open space. Sound behaves differently without gravity. It travels cleanly, unbroken, wrapping around the space before fading into silence. Voices echo softly, then dissolve. Even silence feels spacious here. The air is cool, but not cold, refreshing against the skin. Without gravity pulling warmth downward, temperature distributes evenly, creating a perfect balance, neither warm nor cool, but comfortably neutral. Light pours into the core from every direction. The inner surface of the cylinder reflects illumination inward, creating a soft, even glow. Shadows are faint and fleeting, shifting gently as the structure rotates. There is no single source of light, no harsh contrast. Everything feels suspended in a luminous calm. Looking outward from the center, you can see the full curvature of the world. Forests arc overhead like a living ceiling. Rivers trace luminous lines along the interior surface, shimmering as they curve away into the distance. Cities glow softly, their lights woven into the landscape like constellations made of stone and leaf. It is breathtaking. The sense of scale is immense, yet comforting. You are not dwarfed by it, you are embraced by it. The world wraps around you, complete and self-sustaining. In this space, movement becomes a form of meditation. People gather here not to travel, but to feel, to experience weightlessness not as novelty, but as peace, to let go of the constant downward pull that defines so much of life elsewhere. Here, bodies learn new ways to rest. You might drift until you find yourself slowly rotating, watching the world turn around you. Or you might remain perfectly still, suspended in the center, while the universe moves past. Time feels different here. Without gravity to mark the passage of moments, the mind loses its urgency. Minutes stretch, thoughts slow, breathing deepens. This is a place of reflection. Some come here to think, some to meditate, some simply to exist without effort. There are no paths or floors to dictate direction. Movement is chosen, not required. In the core, architecture serves not to contain, but to suggest. Soft structures curve inward from the surrounding walls, offering places to hold, to rest, to observe. They are shaped like petals, shells, or gentle waves, forms that echo natural patterns rather than imposed geometry. The materials are smooth and warm to the touch, subtly responsive to pressure. They support without gripping, guide without constraining. From time to time, you may notice tiny particles drifting through the air, microscopic reflections of light, harmless and ephemeral. They catch the glow and scatter it softly, adding texture to the space. The effect is dreamlike, but grounded. This is not illusion. It is physics, carefully shaped to feel like poetry. From here, the entire system reveals its harmony. The rotation that creates gravity below is the same motion that creates freedom here. The same design that allows soil to hold roots also allows bodies to float. Everything is connected. The zero-G core becomes a meeting place, not just of people, but of ideas. A space where perspectives shift, where problems feel smaller, where the mind can stretch in new directions. It is here that children learn to move without fear, to trust their bodies in unfamiliar orientations. It is here that elders come to feel light again, to experience motion without strain. And it is here that the world feels most complete. Not because it is finished, but because it is balanced. As the cylinder continues its endless turn, the zero-G core remains constant at its heart. A calm center in a moving universe. A reminder that even within motion, stillness can exist. Time passes quietly here. Light drifts, bodies float, thoughts slow. And in this weightless sanctuary, the future feels gentle. The world does not rush forward. It simply turns, carrying its people with it, held in a perfect, patient embrace. The zero-gravity heart beats softly, and the world breathes on. There comes a moment when light stops being something that simply exists, and becomes something that can be shaped. In the earlier phases of the world, light arrived as a gift, filtered, softened, allowed inside through crystalline windows. It drifted and danced, painting the interior with gentle gradients. But now the relationship deepens. Now, light becomes intentional, high above the living curve of the habitat. Beyond forests and rivers and drifting clouds, immense structures awaken. They have always been there, silent, patient, folded into the architecture of the cylinder, like dormant wings. These are the mirrors. They are not mirrors in the ordinary sense. They do not merely reflect, they sculpt illumination. They bend sunlight with precision and care, shaping day and night not by orbit or accident, but by choice. As the system stirs, the mirrors begin to move. Their motion is slow enough to be almost imperceptible. Vast panels, kilometers across, tilt by fractions of a degree, responding to the angle of the distant star. Their surfaces shimmer with a pearlescent sheen, reflecting not only light but intention. From within the habitat, the change is subtle at first. A brightening here, a soft dimming there. The quality of light shifts, not its intensity, but its character. Shadows grow longer, highlights soften. The warmth of illumination deepens into gold. It feels like late afternoon, even though no sun has crossed a sky. This is the mirror, Sunday at work. Unlike natural stars, which rise and fall according to celestial mechanics, this sun is guided by care. It does not rush. It does not scorch. It follows rhythms chosen to comfort the mind and body, not to obey orbital mathematics. As the mirrors continue their gentle realignment, the light moves across the world in an elegant arc. It slides over forests, glints off rivers, and settles warmly onto terraces and pathways. The effect is deeply calming. It feels as though the world itself is breathing light. Inhale, exhale, each phase unfolding at a pace that feels intuitively right. Shadows lengthen gracefully. Trees stretch their silhouettes across the ground, leaves glowing translucent at their edges. The colors of the world soften, shifting from vibrant greens into deeper, richer hues. The air changes subtly. As the light mellows, temperatures follow. A faint coolness drifts in, not cold, but soothing. The warmth of the day recedes without urgency, replaced by a gentle hush. Birds, if they existed here, would be settling into rest. In their place, the world itself settles. The mirror Sunday continues its slow descent. And with it comes the sensation of evening. But this evening is unlike any on Earth. There is no sudden darkness, no abrupt loss of visibility. Instead, light folds inward, pooling softly along the curved horizon. The sky deepens from bright to amber, then from amber to dusky blue. Stars begin to emerge, not suddenly, but one by one, as though being gently introduced. First a few pinpricks of light, then more. Then constellations unfamiliar yet comforting, arranged by the slow rotation of the habitat and the orientation of the mirrors. The transition is seamless. You might not notice the exact moment day becomes night. It simply happens. The world exhales. Lights within the habitat respond instinctively. They do not turn on abruptly. They awaken. Soft luminescence flows from pathways, from beneath leaves, from subtle veins embedded in architecture. The glow is warm and low, enough to guide but never overwhelm. The night here is not dark, it is intimate. The mirror Sunday has dipped just enough to allow rest, but not fear. Shadows deepen, but they do not threaten. They wrap the world in quiet. Above, the far curve of the cylinder glows faintly, reflecting the distant starlight and the last traces of the sun's echo. It feels like standing inside a vast lantern. Time stretches. This is not a night that demands sleep. It invites reflection. Some might drift through the gardens, their footsteps soft against the earth. Others might sit beside the rivers, watching reflections tremble gently on the water's surface. The world feels open, receptive. The air is cool now, carrying the subtle fragrance of soil and leaf and distant water. It settles into the lungs comfortably, encouraging slower breaths, deeper thoughts. This is a time for contemplation. The mirror Sunday far above continues its slow arc. It does not vanish entirely. Even at its lowest point, it leaves a trace of illumination, enough to keep the world connected, to remind it that the cycle is continuous. Eventually, almost imperceptibly, the light begins to return, not as a sudden dawn, but as a soft lifting of darkness. Blues lighten, shadows retreat, the sky warms again. The sun does not rise, it unfolds. The mirrors adjust with exquisite precision, coaxing light back into the world. Morning returns not with urgency, but with grace, and with it, a renewed sense of rhythm. Day and night here are not opposites. They are partners, moving in harmony, each giving meaning to the other. This rhythm is chosen, not imposed. It can be adjusted, slowed, softened. There are seasons here, but they are gentle seasons, defined by mood rather than necessity. Time becomes something lived rather than endured. As the light strengthens, the world stirs again. Leaves lift toward warmth, water glimmers, the air brightens. Life continues, not because it must, but because it wants to. The Mirror Sunday has done more than provide illumination. It has given the world a heartbeat, a rhythm to grow by, a cycle to rest within. And in that rhythm, the inhabitants present or future find something profoundly grounding, a sense of belonging within time itself, not racing against it, not trapped by it, but moving with it like light sliding gently across a curved horizon. As the sun completes its arc and the day fully returns, the world feels complete in a new way, balanced, alive, held in a dance of light and shadow that will continue, endlessly patient, endlessly kind. The Mirror Sunday turns, and the world turns with it. Together, they begin another day. There comes a moment when you stop looking outward and begin to look up. Not in wonder at distant stars, not in awe of vast machinery or celestial motion, but in quiet recognition of where you are, of what surrounds you, of how completely the world has become itself. This is that moment. You are standing on the ground, now. Real ground. Soil that holds warmth, memory, and softness beneath your feet. It yields slightly when you step, not in weakness, but in welcome. The earth has weight, and yet it feels gentle, forgiving, alive. Above you stretches the sky, but not a sky as you once knew it. It curves, it arcs impossibly overhead, bending away in a vast continuous sweep until it disappears into itself. The world rises around you like the inside of a great bowl, its edges lifting until they meet far above, forming a complete, living circle. You are standing inside a horizon. The sensation is disorienting at first, not unsettling, just unfamiliar. The mind reaches for old references, sky above, ground below. But here, the sky is the ground just far away. A mirror of earth and forest and river suspended overhead, glowing softly with reflected light. You realize then that there is no above in the way you once understood it. There is only around. The view is vast, yet intimate. Forests stretch upward in graceful arcs, their canopies forming green ribbons that curve into the distance. Rivers gleam as they flow not downward, but sideways, upward toward a horizon that curves back toward you. Lakes hang like polished mirrors, reflecting both sky and ground, creating layers of reflection that blur the line between above and below. It feels impossible, and yet it feels right. Your eyes follow the curve of the world until distance and perspective meet. Where the land seems to rise into the sky, it softens into haze, the details dissolving into light. That far edge feels both distant and close, as if you could walk toward it forever and never quite reach it. The effect is calming, not dizzying. There is a quiet reassurance in knowing that the world is complete, contained, held within itself. There are no edges to fall from, no voids to fear, just continuity. You take a slow breath. The air carries a softness that is hard to describe. It is cool without being cold, warm without being heavy. It feels alive, not in the sense of movement, but in responsiveness. It reacts gently to your presence, shifting around you as though acknowledging your being. Sounds travel differently. Here, a bird calls somewhere far off, and the sound glides through the air, bending slightly as it follows the curve of the space. It arrives softened, layered, carrying with it a sense of depth rather than direction. Footsteps, your own or imagined, do not echo sharply. They dissolve into the ground, absorbed by grass and soil. Every sound is welcomed, then gently released. This place does not amplify noise. It listens. The light is everywhere, yet nowhere in particular. It does not fall from above so much as it exists within the space. Shadows stretch long and curved, wrapping gently around objects, rather than cutting them sharply. As the day progresses, the light shifts almost imperceptibly, moving not across the sky, but along the inner surface of the world. The effect is like watching time itself drift past, slow and unhurried. You can sit here for hours and not feel the need to move. The world invites stillness. From this vantage point, the architecture becomes something else entirely. Structures that once felt grounded now seem like extensions of the terrain, growing naturally from the land. Roofless dwellings curve into hills, walkways blend into paths. There is no clear boundary between what was built and what grew. Everything belongs. The idea of inside and outside loses meaning. You are both sheltered and exposed, held and free. A gentle breeze passes through, brushing against leaves and skin alike. It carries with it the faint scent of water and greenery, of soil warmed by light. It feels clean, balanced. Somewhere in the distance, water flows, softly, steadily. Its presence felt more than heard. The rhythm of it grounds the moment, anchoring the vastness in something familiar. You become aware of your own breathing. It slows. Your thoughts soften. There is nothing to do here, nothing to solve, nothing to escape. The world does not demand attention. It offers presence. And in that presence, something deep inside unwinds. You notice details you might have missed before. The way light refracts through the air near the ground, the subtle gradient of color in the sky as it curves away, the faint shimmer where distant structures catch the sun. Each detail feels deliberate, yet effortless. The world is not showing off. It is simply being itself. There is a profound comfort in this. It feels like standing inside a living thought, an idea made gentle and expansive enough to inhabit. Time passes, but it doesn't press forward. It moves like a tide, washing in and out without urgency. You could stay here for hours, days, years, and it would still feel like a single, unbroken moment. As the light shifts again, the far horizon brightens slightly, hinting at another phase of the cycle. The world continues its slow turn, carrying you with it. Nothing needs to change. Nothing needs to be added. This is the view the world was built for. To stand on solid ground and look up, not at an unreachable sky, but at a continuation of your own world, wrapping gently around you, like an embrace. You are not small here. You are part of the curve, part of the rhythm, part of the quiet understanding that this place was shaped not for survival, but for belonging. And as you remain there, breathing, watching, feeling the world turn around you, a simple truth settles in. This is what it means to be home. Not enclosed, not confined, but held by a world that knows exactly how to carry you. The horizon curves, the light drifts, the moment lingers, and the world, whole and patient, continues to turn. There is a moment when you drift far enough back from something beautiful, when you stop seeing its details and begin to sense its meaning. This is that moment. The world you have walked upon, breathed within, and watched awaken now begins to recede. Not because it is leaving you, but because your perspective widens. The gentle curve of the land, the soft glow of its skies, the living hush of its forests and waters, all of it remains steady and complete. Yet now, You are invited to see it as part of something larger. You drift outward, slowly, effortlessly, carried not by engines or force but by intention. The world below grows quieter, smaller, though never diminished. It remains whole, cradled in its own rhythm, turning with serene confidence. And then you see it, another. At first, it is only a suggestion, a pale arc of light in the distance, faint as breath on glass. It curves in a familiar way, echoing the shape you now know so well. As you watch, it grows clearer, resolving into a second cylinder, rotating in silent harmony. A companion world, not a copy, but a counterpart. The two drift together, paired in motion, their rotations carefully tuned so that their rhythms complement one another. They orbit a shared center of balance, like dancers moving through an endless waltz. Between them, space feels charged, not with tension, but with relationship. Light passes from one to the other, reflected softly across mirrored surfaces. When one brightens, the other glows in response. Their days and nights converse across the void, exchanging illumination, shadow, and time. This is the beginning of the fleet, not a collection of machines, but a gathering of worlds. As you drift farther back, more shapes emerge from the darkness. One by one, faint arcs appear, some near, some distant, each with its own rhythm, its own orientation. Together they form a constellation, not of stars, but of habitats. Each one is alive in its own way. Some glow warmer, with golden hues that suggest dense forests and shallow seas. Others shimmer cooler, tinted with blues and silvers that hint at open water and wide skies. A few are still dim, young worlds in the early stages of becoming. They do not crowd one another. They drift with respectful distance, maintaining a choreography refined over time. Their motions are subtle but precise, an intricate dance of mass and momentum that keeps them bound without collision. This is not chaos. This is a system. The silence between them is immense, yet it does not feel empty. It hums with quiet order, with purpose, with trust. Each world knows its place. Each contributes to the whole. From here you can see how light moves between them, how reflections from one habitat kiss the surface of another, how shadows stretch and retreat as they pass. The effect is mesmerizing, like a slow cosmic breathing. Together, they form an archipelago, not of land and sea, but of possibility. An island chain, not bound by oceans, but by intention. The stars beyond seem to recede, no longer the dominant presence. The true constellation now is this one, human-crafted worlds, drifting in gentle formation, each a home, each a story. There is something profoundly peaceful about this view. No sense of urgency, no sense of conquest, just continuity. Each cylinder carries within it a complete ecosystem, a balanced interplay of air, water, light, and life. And yet none stands alone. They exist in quiet cooperation, sharing light, exchanging energy, supporting one another across vast distances. This is not expansion for its own sake. It is stewardship. You can imagine the slow passage of time here, decades unfolding as softly as moments, generations growing up under curved skies, never knowing fear of the void, only the comfort of a world designed to nurture them. You can imagine stories traveling between habitats, ideas carried by light, by transmission, by memory, cultures evolving in parallel, shaped by slightly different skies, slightly different rhythms, yet connected by shared origin and purpose. The fleet moves together not toward conquest or escape, but toward continuity. It is humanity learning to live with space, not against it. From this vantage, Earth is no longer the sole cradle of life. It becomes one of many beginnings, a remembered home rather than the only one. And yet, Earth is not forgotten. Its presence lingers in the design, the curves inspired by horizons, the balance inspired by ecosystems, the care learned from centuries of trial and error. Every world here carries that legacy, refined and reimagined. The fleet does not rush outward. It drifts, slowly, deliberately, with patience that spans generations. It moves not toward conquest, but toward possibility. As you watch, the worlds continue their quiet dance. Light glides across their surfaces. Shadows drift. Colors shift with subtlety and grace. There is a profound sense of peace in knowing that this movement has no end point. It is not a journey towards something final, but a way of being. A civilization not defined by borders, but by balance. Not by expansion, but by harmony. The stars remain distant, but no longer unreachable. They are companions now, part of the same tapestry. And within this vast, gentle architecture of light and motion, humanity has found a way to belong. Not by conquering the cosmos, but by learning how to live within it. The island fleet continues its silent voyage, a constellation of living worlds drifting through the deep. And somewhere within one of those worlds, a person stands beneath a curved sky, breathing softly, feeling the world turn around them, knowing, perhaps without words, that this is enough, that this is home, that the future does not rush, it simply unfolds. And so the fleet glides onward, wrapped in starlight and stillness, carrying with it a quiet promise that life, when given space and care, will always find a way to grow, gently, patiently, and beautifully, among the stars.